Insomniac's Wolverine was one of the most hotly anticipated games in the world. I mean, going into 2023, and while there's still a lot of excitement around the finished product, it's no secret. The game has been the center of a lot of a controversy due to a huge leak that came out and basically put the entire game on display with a lot of internal plans, documents, employee information, all that stuff. You've heard about it. It was one of the most catastrophic leaks in the history of gaming, and we're obviously not going to go over the sensitive things that were leaked, but I do want to dive into the specific gameplay related things about the game and what this could mean on whether or not the game even sees the light of day anymore. You heard me right. I mean, it could end up being canceled. You never know. I mean, especially in today's gaming industry. This leak was much more damaging than a lot of people seem to realize. But I'm sure you guys will let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. So let's jump into it. And if you're excited to see what Insomniac does with the Marvel Universe in general, let's talk Wolverine. But before we do, today's video is sponsored by Bespoke Post. It is a monthly membership club delivering basically a box of awesome top shelf goods from under the radar brands. It's free to join and you can skip a month or cancel anytime you want. 90% of the products come from small brands, many of which are based right here in the US. An example is Carnivore, the American barbecue rub in the Carnivore box. It is made by the Great American Spice Company in Rockford, Michigan. Every month they introduce their members to cool new products, outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, and a lot more. Even live oysters. Seriously, live oysters, based on the preference quiz that they fill out. Every box of awesome has around $70 worth of goods inside, but costs you only a fraction of the value. Another cool feature about the boxes is you get to preview them before they ship. That's right. You'll get a box of awesome assigned to you, and before it actually gets shipped out, you get to see a preview of what's inside. So you can decide if you like it, or if you want to swap it out for a different box, or if you want to skip the month entirely for no charge. You only pay for what you want. Bespoke Post was kind enough to send me a couple boxes tailored straight to me, and we're going to open them and take a look. The first one is the Canteen box, which is perfect for when we go camping in the fall. It comes with the Hedgehog lunch bag, which is pretty cool. It's insulated on the inside. It can hold up to 6 cans. You can't have the lunch bag without the lunch box. A reusable bento box. 3 separate compartments, efficient. You can transport any lunch that you want to prep. It's dishwasher safe, microwave safe, has multiple containers. You can pack anything you want. And finally, if you have a lunch bag and a lunch box, you need something to eat your lunch with. That is where the Porter utensil set comes in. Food grade stainless steel, dishwasher safe. It's just handy. You always need a fork, knife, and spoon. And the other box was the Retreat box. And this one is very simple. It is a hammock and a blanket. You get to pick the blanket color you want, and you get your on-the-go hammock. 100% nylon, 100% polyester rope, stuffs down into this little hammock bag. It's pretty cool. And then to go along with it, if it's chilly, you have the on-the-go blanket. 100% cotton with built-in stake loops, actually also folds into a pillow. So head over to Bespoke Post right now to customize your first box of awesome. And also get 20% off your first box of awesome. Click the link in the description, enter code CHAOS20 at checkout, or just go to bespokepost.com/chaos20. Click the link in the description and pick the box that best suits you. Now, I'm sure most of you saw at least some of the leaked gameplay, but in case you didn't, I'll give you the cliff notes. Wolverine is going to be a third-person action game with intense melee combat, lots of blood, lots of gore, and an open linear level design similar to God of War 2018. Maybe think Batman Arkham Asylum, which is good. You'll wander around the various hub levels, you'll complete missions, while you'll also discover secrets and using his heightened senses to sniff out traces of enemies and objectives. Now, it's not going to be an open-world game like Insomniac's other Marvel title, but honestly, I think that's a good thing, because Wolverine isn't really the kind of character that would fit in an open-world setting very well, at least in my opinion. I guess if Insomniac gave him a motorcycle, then the open-world setting could work, but ultimately, I think they settled on the perfect formula for an exciting experience that plays to the character's strengths and doesn't keep the player out of combat for too long, because obviously, he's at his best when he's ripping and tearing through hordes of enemies. Now, almost immediately after the gameplay leaked, people started comparing it to God of War 2018, and the similarities are clear. Both are third-person hack-and-slash games, slower pace, methodical. Slower than Devil May Cry or classic God of War games, and there's a heavy emphasis on the impact of your blows. There's also a lot of cinematic transitions from set piece to set piece. Now, the combat sections are usually against a handful of enemies at once, so again, it won't be like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta when you dropped into this big arena with dozens of respawning enemies, but They did take, they took some inspiration from God of War 2018 and even God of War Ragnarok for their combat system. I mean, as much as people want to say it's a bad thing, I once again think it fits the character and the universe well. Now, during the build-up of the hype, a lot of people expressed desire for something along the lines of the X-Men Origins games on the PS3 and the 360, which ironically took heavy influence from the classic God of War trilogy. You guys remember that game? The X-Men Origins movie was a giant piece of you-know-what, but at the tie-in game, it's arguably one of the best superhero games ever made. It featured over-the-top action, lots of blood, lots of guts, and a super fast-paced and deep combat system that made you feel the power of Wolverine in every sequence. Now, after Insomniac's gameplay leaked, a lot of people took to Twitter. They started saying they were disappointed that the studio decided to take influence from God of War 2018 instead of classic God of War trilogies, or basically just making a spiritual successor to the X-Men Origins game. And honestly, I see both sides of the debate. On one side, I totally understand people wanting something different from the reboot God of War after Sony has been pushing the series on us for many years. And look, I love the reboot. I do. I love God of War. But I understand why some people would be getting a little burnt out on that combat style. Plus, after the X-Men Origins game gave us such a bombastic and high-energy representation of this superhero, I understand why people seeing Insomniac's version could feel like a step backward. But on the other side of it, Insomniac's Marvel Universe is meant to be on a more realistic side of things, or at least as realistic as you could be with a bunch of superheroes running around. The X-Men Origins versions of Wolverine was like the comic come to life, but I'm not sure if something like that would fit into the Insomniac universe. In the X-Men Origins game, he could jump 50 feet, juggle enemies for ridiculous combos, rip them into a million little pieces. It was cool, yes, but it wasn't really the tone that Insomniac was going for with their Marvel Universe. And on top of all that, the rebooted God of War games are very popular. While more fast-paced and over-the-top hack-and-slash games like X-Men Origins, they weren't. I mean, obviously, they're still around, DMC 5, Bayonetta 3, but if you're looking at things from Sony's perspective, it's easy to see why they would want something more akin to reboot God of War, especially since those games were some of their all-time best-selling. Now, I'm not trying to say one opinion is more valid than the other, because frankly, if Insomniac's game was basically just X-Men Origins 2, I would be ecstatic. But I think the gameplay looks good. I can't wait to see what it looks like when it's finished. But that brings me to the next point. Part of the massive Insomniac leak was actually a full playable version of the in-development PC port of Wolverine, and a number of people have actually been able to get it up and running on their home computers. But if that wasn't crazy enough, apparently some modders have started working on the leaked build of the game and are actually finishing it. Meaning, within a few weeks or maybe a couple months, there's probably going to be a full-fledged PC version of Insomniac's Wolverine floating around the internet. In fact, this version of the game is 100% going to beat the PS5 version of market, which could end up being catastrophic for game sales. And when I say modders are finishing the game, that means a couple things. Right now, seems like modders are just doing technical things like fixing up the performance, patching up the textures, basically filling in the blank spaces of the leaked build. But once it's done, I'm certain some modders are going to start making their own levels, their own combat mechanics, and quite literally finishing Insomniac's work. Meaning the PC version of Wolverine may end up being wildly different than the official version of the game, and it's going to be available to the public before the official one is. I've honestly never seen anything like this happen. It's truly way more of a mess than a lot of people actually realize. Now, all of this raises a pretty tough question. Is Insomniac actually going to release this game? I mean, there's a playable version floating around the internet. Modders are starting to fill in the cracks and finish it on their own. By the time the game comes out, everybody's probably going to have seen the gameplay and the story. According to the Insomniac schedule leaks, Wolverine was going to launch in 2026, but at that point, there's no surprises left. What's the point of continuing to work on a game if by the time it comes out, everybody will have seen what it has to offer, and there will almost certainly be at least one or two versions of the PC port thanks to the modding community taking it in their own direction? How awkward would it be if Insomniac does release it in 2026, but then people actually end up liking the modders version more? I mean, I hate to say it, but I think there's a very good possibility they may look in the mirror and say, we may just pull the plug, because so many things have gone off the rails and the updated profit margins can't look as good as they did before it leaked. Now, I also want to make note. I've seen plenty of games in alpha, pre-alpha builds. I've played games. I remember going and playing Black Ops 3 in a pre-alpha build, and the game looked phenomenal in pre-alpha, but there was bugs, there was issues, there was things that weren't done, and instantly people started hating on this when it leaked, saying, oh my gosh, it looks like an Xbox 360 game or a PS2 game. You have to understand how games are made. They're built from the ground up, and then by the time you get to the end and they go gold, You've filled in all the blanks. You've filled in all the cracks. You've tested everything over and over and over, and you've got it polished and where you want it to be. No game in pre-alpha is what it's going to look like when you get your hands on it. If it does, there's a major, major problem. So to everybody hating, saying, I'm not buying this game because it looks like this, you're not buying that game. You're buying a game that was scheduled to come out in 2.5 years. I mean, think about the time in the oven. It's funny to me that people go that route when they see things like that. They did it with the GTA 6 leak as well, which is just, it blows my mind, but whatever. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think Sony and Insomniac continue forward with this game? It's going to be an integral part of their Marvel universe that they're building in the video game space. Or do you think they feel the damage is too much and they just pull the plug and they start on a Superman game or an Iron Man game? What do you guys think?